Hello, good game. Welcome back, ghouls and goblins. I hope you're all having a magical day. Thank you so much for taking the time to support the channel. Crimson Vow Limited Guide. The quick draft is here. This is the best way to farm your collection if you're looking to do so. This is because you're drafting now against the bots while you're picking your cards, and you can do a much better job at building a competitive deck this way, where you're not competing against other human beings who exactly have it dialed in. They know what they're doing, and it's a lot more competition. So we're going to take advantage of some of the archetypes. We're going to do our best to showcase them all to you. There is 10 of them. We're going through all of the dual colored decks. It doesn't mean that you can't run a single colored deck in draft if you have a big enough pool, right? If you get enough cards, sure, go for it. But the majority of time, it's going to be a two-color deck. It might even be a two-color deck with a third color splashed in. With this being said, we will not only discuss the archetypes and decks and rank them, but we'll also do our best to help you along the journey of drafting in general, showing you the tools and resources that not only myself personally use, but I know a majority of the community is using as well. So buckle up, get ready, like the video to show your support, and first off, let's take a look at some of these deck archetypes. I've gone ahead and built some limited decks. Dimir Exploit, Selesnya +1 counters humans, Orzhov life gain vampires, Izzet whenever casts / flying, Azorius enchantments, Gruel Werewolves with trample, and then Rakdos Vampires with blood tokens, Boros Aggro, Simic Mill, and Horror, and Golgari Toughness in no specific order. We're going to go through the decks and try to rate them as we do this because, it's up in the air. You have to really put in a ton of time to be able to grasp what is going on in Limited as a meta base. However, as you'll see throughout today's video, there's definitely some standout cards that are included within multiple decks, and these will be your highest priority picks because there is some serious competition for them. With that being said, you're lucky enough, within the quick draft at least, to be picking your cards against bots, which don't know this. You do now. And even through this knowledge, it might give you a competitive edge in the Premier Draft as well. So let's just start with Dimir Exploit. This is the first build that we went through. There will be more than 40 cards in the deck, obviously, because you won't see all these cards. You won't have access to each one of them. So some will hit, some won't. With this being said, Exploit allows us to sacrifice a creature when a creature with Exploit enters the battlefield, and then we'll have triggers based on that, which is pretty cool. And the cornerstone card within Dimir Exploit is the Skull Scab for 2, a 2/2 with Exploit, and whenever a creature you control exploits a non-token creature, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this is quite nice. We have other things in the build with Exploit. If I go up here, we can search it. And the Fellstinger is another great card here. 3/2. Whenever a creature is exploited, target player will draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. And we'll get that 2/2 zombie. So that's very, very good. We have the Repository Scab as well for 4 as a 3/3. And whenever it exploits a creature, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, which is really good in Limited. Anytime you can recycle your cards, that's going to increase the value of them, right? The replayability. And then finally, the Diver Scob for 5, a 3/5 with Exploit, and whenever it exploits a creature, target creature's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So this will allow us to kind of recycle those creatures, and the dream here within this deck is you get multiple copies of the Scob, as it is, the cornerstone of the deck. You have the Fellstinger, and then you have the Diver Scob, just to recycle that Fellstinger back over and over and over again. The repository should allow us to replay our removal. That's something that we should transition to next. So we have the Parasitic Grasp. This is absolutely amazing. For 2 mana, dealing 3 damage to target creature, you gain 3 life. Very, very good. We can also, to target human creature. you gain 3 life. And then if we're cleaving it for 3, any creature. So I think this is fairly good removal within black, as we don't have red damage-based removal. And then we also have Hero's Downfall, destroy target creature or planeswalker. This is quite nice. Again, just casting it for the 3 mana. If it's above 3 toughness, right? Try to prioritize your removal. We have Bleed Dry as well. Target creature gets -13 until the end of turn, and then if it would die, exile it instead, which is quite nice, especially if they're trying to play a recursion-based deck as well. Another key card within this build is the Archghoul of Thrabin. I don't even know, I'm sorry. For 3 mana, it's a 3/2, and whenever it or another zombie we control dies, look at the top card of our library. If it's a zombie card, we may reveal it and put it into our hand. Woof. If you don't put the card into your hand, put it into your graveyard, right? So if it's a zombie, you draw it, which, you know, we're playing a zombie deck. And then if it's a land, it goes to your graveyard, allowing you to draw, hopefully, another non-land. So this will help us, you know, kind of sort through our deck really quickly. So be on the lookout for this, as it will increase the deck's consistency. Something like the Wretched Throng is really cool as well if we're exploiting it, because when it dies, you may search your library for a card named Wretched Throng, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle, right? So that's absolutely amazing, which is cool beans. Doomed Dissenter, when it dies, it creates a zombie, which is fairly decent as well. It's not a must-have. The Undead Butler, when it dies, mill 3, and when it enters mill 3, and when it dies, you may exile it. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So just, you know, more replayability within this deck. The Undying Malice, when a creature dies, we'll return it to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, which is nice. So, you know, if we're going to exploit something, you can put the Malice on it. You get the exploit trigger, and then you also get your other creature back, which is really cool. The Specimen is a good target to be exploiting because you can pay 3 to return it from the grave to the battlefield tapped. Boom, re-exploit it. So there's really good value within Dimir Exploit. The Desperate Farmer is just, it's a 2/2 with lifelink, turns into a 4/3 with lifelink. How can you not? There's just some general value in there. Like Biolume Egg, LOL. Egg. So this is, speaking of exploit, it's not a zombie, but an amazing card to be exploiting. It's a 0/4 defender, so it's, you know, you get to scry 2 as well. It defends, and then when you exploit it, it comes in as a 4/4. And then you can sacrifice 2 islands to have it gain unblockable. Very good card to be exploiting. Food for thought if you see that around, because who doesn't love that, right? And then we have the Skywarp Scob for 5, 2/5 with flying. When it enters battlefield, you may exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you do, draw a card. We'll have lots of stuff in our graveyard because, you know, that's how things go, and the drawing is great. A 2/5 flyer is pretty cool as well. Crazy Ritual. This is really expensive removal. The last of the removal that I would be looking for, but it, you know, destroy target creature or planeswalker, create 2 blood tokens. Meh. Something I think like the Hero's Downfall is much, much better. Even the Bleed Dries is cheaper. It's just better in my opinion. The blood tokens are nice late game, and some removal is better than no removal. Anywho, this is Dimir Exploit. You'll be using, like I said, those exploit creatures to gain additional value. Recycle your own stuff from the grave for replayability. And I really like that as a deck archetype. Moving on to Selesnya +1/+1 counter / humans within white and green, of course. Focused around our cornerstone card of Sigardian Paladin for 4 mana. This is a 4/4, and as long as you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on a creature this turn, the Paladin will gain trample and lifelink. Woof. We can also pay 3 to give target creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it, trample and lifelink until the end of turn as well. This is something that we can do multiple times. It doesn't tap it. We can just sink our mana into it, put put life gain and trample on creature that has counters. While we're on that note, Ollenbach in Escort, you can sacrifice it to give a creature with the +1/+1 counters indestructible and lifelink until the end of turn. It's a 1/1 with vigilance as well. So just really good value, as we can give anything of ours that has a +1/+1 counter indestructible. With that being said, Angelic Quartermaster can help us put +1/+1 counters on a creature. It's a 3/3 with flying for 5. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on up to each of 2 other target creatures. which is really nice. Synergizing as well with the Cloaked Cadet for 5, a 2/4 with training. Whenever it's a weaker creature attacking, it's going to get of toughness anyways. Sorry, power, not toughness. It's going to get a +1/+1, which is great. And then whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on one or more humans you control, draw a card, triggering only once each turn. So the nice thing about this is that training will trigger it itself. Very, very cool beans. We have Lay to Rest. Whenever a human you control dies, draw a card. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, you gain 2 life. Nice. We have something like the Dormant Grove, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has toughness of 6 or greater, transform the Grove into a 3/6 with Vigilance, giving all of our other creatures Vigilance as well. Woof. The Slinger is a 4/3, and when it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1. Destroy target artifact an opponent controls, or fight a zombie that our opponent controls, which, you know, I think a lot of people are going to be running zombies, so I think this is a decent card. And then we have the Griffwing Cavalry for 4, a 2/2 flying and training. That training can help trigger those +1 counters. And then whenever it attacks, we may pay 2. If we do, another target attacking creature without flying gains flying this turn. We love that. Very cool beans. The Griff Rider is a 2/1 with flying and training as well for those +1/+1 counters. Evasion through flying is nice. And then the Taxidermist, a 1/2. We can tap to add mana. Gets +3/+2 as long as there's 4 or more creatures in your graveyard. I don't know. It seemed like it fit as a human. And then removal, Valorous Stance, indestructible for a creature or power 4 or greater gets destroyed. Fierce Retribution, destroying attacking creature, or we can cleave for 6 to destroy any creature. I think that's really good, because typically you would remove creatures that are attacking you anyways. And then the Brambleworm. I don't know if this really belongs in there, but why not? A 7/6 with Reach and Trample. When it enters battlefield, gain 5 life, and then we can pay 3 to exile it from our graveyard to gain another 5 life. It just seems fun. It's a big baddie. I mean, a 7/6. And if you can give it flying with the cavalry, hey, why not? Why not? Because everything else is going to grab trample, and you can also give it lifelink and trample, which I think is incredible. To even though it's not a human, yeah, just get those counters on it first and foremost. Whether it's probably Dormant Grove or the Angelic Quartermaster, but once you've got them there, it's going to be a great time. So I think that this deck is very well positioned. I like it, and it was unexpected, and it's a good mixture, right? We have a lot of creatures to a decent amount of non-creatures that feel fairly strong, like Lay to Rest and Dormant Grove as enchantments feel absolutely amazing here, and not a lot of people run enchantment removal in Limited. So that was Selesnya +1 countered humans. Moving on to Orzhov Life Gain / Vampires. This deck's cornerstone card will be Markov Purifier for 3. It's a 2/3 with lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Woof. That's absolutely amazing. So we have vampires, and we want to be gaining life. We're kind of mixing in a little bit of blood token here as well. Notable cards: Vampire Kiss. Target player loses 2 life. You gain 2 life. Create 2 blood tokens. That's amazing. We can pay 1, discard a card to sacrifice the blood token to draw a card if you're unfamiliar. And then we're utilizing blood tokens through things like the Restless Bloodseeker for 2 mana, a 1/3. And at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained life this turn, create a blood token. Really high synergy here. We can also sacrifice 2 blood tokens to transform it at sorcery speed into a 3/3. And at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained life this turn, create a blood token. Decent. And then we can pay 5. Each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. Okay, that's really, really good in Limited, right? Let's be honest. Moving on, we have the Panicked Bystander as well. Such a house card for 2 mana, a 2/2. Whenever it or another creature we control dies, gain 1 life. Decent, that's going to help us out. And at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained 3 or more life this turn, transform the Bystander into a 3/5. And whenever the Crackling Culprit, which is the transformed variant here, dies, you gain 1 life. Or another creature, of course. And then we can pay 2 to give it Death Touch until the end of turn. So, a 3/5 that is gaining life and has Death Touch is fairly decent. I really actually quite enjoy it. Moving on, we have the Bloodsworn Squire for 4 mana. It's a 3/3, and we can pay 2 to discard a card, give it indestructible until the end of turn. We also tap it. This is incredibly good just to dodge non-exiled based or non-minus effect removal, which is decent. And then if there are 4 more creature cards in your graveyard, transform the Squire into an XX or star, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. We can pay 2 to discard a card, giving it indestructible until the end of turn, tapping it as well. So it doesn't lose that ability. I think this is a fairly good card. The fact that it can dodge the removal consistently is really nice. Moving on, we have the Wedding Security for 5, a 4/4, and whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a blood token. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Wedding Security and draw a card. Decent. Don't mind if I do. Gift of the Fangs. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 as long as it's a vampire. Otherwise, it gets -2/-2. We have Fierce Retribution as well for removal. Destroy target attacking creature. Cleave for 6 to get around the attacking. Sanctify. Destroy target artifact or enchantment and gain 3 life. That's nice. Valorous Stance. 4 or greater. Destroy with its toughness or give indestructible to a creature you control until the end of turn. The Allenbach Escort is here to give the Wedding Security indestructible. It's all right. It's not required. It's just something that I'd like to do because it's going to be getting stronger. It's also one of our primary draw engines. The Purifier is as well. It's not a must-have. It's just something that we'll all be competing over. But nonetheless, I do think the Vampire deck is very well positioned. I mean, there's really good value creatures here, and there's a lot of draw as well, mixed with the majority of removal within, white and black, mostly always, is really good. You'll be just like sifting through your deck, playing creatures, getting all the removal you need, and I really, really like the Orzhov life gain Vampire build here. Moving on to Izzet Whenever Cast /Flyers. This deck was a little weird to make, but it did come together quite well. The cornerstone card is Wandering Mind for 3, a 2/1 with flying, and whenever Wandering Mind enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it into your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is going to help us, draw those instances, sorceries. In the build, you could draw, enchantments and artifacts with it as well, or even planeswalkers, but not here. This is whenever you cast instant and sorcery variant. So the Kezig Flame Breather is something that you'd want to get as many copies of as possible. A 1/3, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Very, very good. We also have the Frenzied Devils for 5, a 3/3 with haste, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the Devils will get +2/+2 until the end of turn. Absolutely phenomenal, right? The Lambolt Racketeur for 4 mana, a 2/4, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the Racketeur will deal 1 damage to each opponent, which, is irrelevant here. That's Daybound. Nightbound, it'll deal 2 damage, which is really good, and it's a 4/4, so much scarier on the attack phase. We also have the Cruel Witness for 4, a 3/3 with flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. Pretty decent, right? It's a good way to sift through your library. We have the Voltaic Visionary. This is a 3/1. We can tap it to deal 2 damage to ourselves, exile the top card of our library, allowing us to play it this turn. Activating this only at sorcery speed, and then whenever you play an exiled card with it, we'll transform it into a 4/3 that cannot block. That's just fairly good, in my opinion. A 4/3 that's coming out for 2. We'll have to deal a little bit of damage to ourselves, but it shouldn't be a problem. And then it's just a lot of instances and sorceries on top of all of this. The Ancestral Anger plus X plus 0, where X is 1 plus the number of cards named Ancestral Anger in the graveyard, and we draw a card. So this is going to buff up our creature, give it trample, and help us draw. Very, very good. Plus, each time we cast, it does damage, and we're drawing, replace. It's great. Good stuff. And the Festivities, 1 damage to each opponent, creature, and planeswalker they control. Decent. More serious removal through a Braid. This is going to be highly competitive. Not in the quick draft, but in the premier draft. 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. Absolutely loving it. We have the Lunar Rejection for 2. Cleave for 4 at instant speed. Return target wolf or werewolf to its creature to its owner's hand and draw a card. Decent. I mean, I think this is just really good to open up our attacking lanes. It pushes up the devil, stuff like that, right? Thirst for Discovery. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 unless you discard a basic land card, helping us draw, which is great. Rending Flame, 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If it's a permanent spirit, it will deal 2 damage to that permanent's controller as well. That's decent because there's lots of spirits in the build. Finally, we have the Screaming Swarm, which I should have mentioned earlier, a 4/4 with flying, and whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, target player mills that many cards. We can pay 3 to return it from our graveyard to the library, second from the top, and it's a 4/4 flyer. That's fairly decent, right? This is the deck. These are all the cards you want to play with, and again, this really surprised me. I think if you get the right pulls, right, you get lots of the Flame Breathers, you get lots of the Frenzied Devils, even the Racketeer fits well. Oh man, there's just so many whenever you cast. The Cruel Witness is great. So I think that this deck is very well positioned. Moving on, trying to keep a brisk pace here, Azorius Enchantment / Spirits. Again, another very powerful build I'm finding, with the Brine Comer as our cornerstone card, a 1/1, and whenever it enters the battlefield or becomes a target of an aura spell, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. We can replay the Brine-bound Gift for 2 mana via Disturbed to enchant a creature when it enters the battlefield, or enchanted creature becomes a target of a spell or an aura, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. When it's removed, it goes to exile. So this is great. We can fill the field with 1/1 flyers. With that being said, it is a spirit tribal deck, so we've got a lot of spirits which come back into play as enchantments. And this alone will provide you immense value within your matches, because basically every single card you have is 2 cards, similar to how Broken Adventure was on a lesser scale, right? It has to die before you can replay it, where Adventure you could play it first and then again as the creature. So there's a little bit more of a contingency there, but still, nonetheless, incredibly powerful. So some of these cards are the Lantern Bearer and Lantern's Gift, a 1/1 with flying for 1, Disturbed for 3. Enchant creature gets +1/+1 and flying. This is incredible because we can enchant the Comer to make those tokens, or maybe even something like the Twin Blade Geist with Double Strike, getting that in the air, and we can power that up later as well. There's also, the Blade creatures, the 3/1s that we can keep alive, stuff like that. You'd be exiling this and bringing it back, but so you drop the auras. However, that's a little bit more in depth. We'll get there. So the Bearer is great. It's a quick flyer, and it comes back and gives something else flying. The Infiltrate 2/2, decent. Disturb for 4. Enchant creature gets +2/+2. Not the greatest, but if you're triggering that spirit, all of a sudden this thing is a 3/3. That's going to be okay. We have the Twin Blade for Double Strike, already mentioning this, and when it comes back as an enchantment, giving Double Strike, which is fairly cool as well. So we're dealing a lot of damage. Valorous Stance is in every deck with white. Destroy a creature with toughness 4 or greater, or give something indestructible. That's how good it is. The Mischievous Cat Geist, I actually really like this. This is a 1/1, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. If we're putting Double Strike on this, we're drawing 2 cards. Beautiful. And then, the enchantment brings in that effect, like they all do. The Soul Cipher board and the Cipher-bound Spirit. The board enters with 3 Omen counters on it. We can pay 2, tap it to look at the top 2 cards of our library, put one of them into the graveyard, something with Disturb that we'll still gain access to, or just a land that we don't need. Whenever a creature card is put into your graveyard from anywhere via the ability, you will remove an Omen counter from the Soul Cipher board, and then if there are no Omen counters on it, transform it. It's a 3/2 with flying, and it can only block other creatures with flying. However, you can pay 4 to draw 2 cards and then discard a card. That's where it really all comes together for the value. The Steelclad Spirit for 2, a 3/3 with Defender, and whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. That's fairly good, and we'll be playing enchantments the majority of the time, so it's a viable card. The Geistlight Snare Counterspell for 3, reducing its cost by 2 if we have a Spirit and enchantment, countering it unless they pay 3 themselves. The Binding Geist and Spectral Geist, a 3-drop Spirit, 3/1. When it attacks, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0 until the end of turn. That's actually pretty good. Paying 2 for the Disturbed to bring that ability onto another creature. Kindly Ancestor, 2/3 with lifelink to stir for 2, giving something else lifelink, right? Cool Beans. And then the Distracting Geist is a 2/1, and whenever it attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. Very good alongside the Binding Geist, right? The Distracting Geist and Binding Geist together is 10 thumbs up. We can pay the Clever Distraction for 5 and bring that ability back into play as well. The Gutter Skulker for 4, 3/3, and as long as it's, it can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone, which is pretty good. And then we can pay 4 for the Disturb to bring that ability back over, which is decent. So can't be blocked on the draw cards with Double Strike. Hey, this is starting to add up to a pretty nice looking deck. And of course, we're making Spirits throughout that whole process, controlling the field. The Cleave to return permanents we control to its owner's hands is great. And then, if we're cleaving it, so they returning our opponent's creatures is good too, right? Whew. So this deck holds a lot of value, and I would definitely look forward to hopefully getting some of these cards, as I think it is one of the more competitive decks that we've looked at. Moving on now to Gruel Werewolves, hashtag Trample and tokens. It's underwhelming. I thought it would get better because Gruel was so underrated in the Midnight Hunt limited format that I was like, okay, it was kind of like Izzet, where they're really going to increase the power level here. And they did a little bit, but it's still leaving a lot to be desired. The cornerstone card here is Child of the Pack. It's a 4 mana, 2/5. We can pay 4 to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. That's actually pretty decent, right? The fact that we can dump mana into it over and over again is great. Daybound, Nightbound at 5/5, and other creatures get +1/+0. The 5/5 will have trample as well. So, not bad. The fact that it is mana sink, something that we can continually dump our mana to gain value through, is probably the coolest part of it. So a lot of wolves and werewolves in the build. Let's start with the Snarling Wolf for 1, a 1/1. We can pay 2 to give it +2/+2 until the end of turn. Activate it only once each turn, but a 3/3 for 1 potentially is good. Massive Might, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until the end of turn, so making us a little bit stronger, giving us trample so we get that combat damage through. We have a Braid, again, 3 damage to target creature, destroy target artifact for removal. The Hungry Ridgewolf stood out to me, a 2/2 for 2 mana, and as long as you control another wolf or werewolf, the Hungry Ridgewolf will get +1 and trample. A decent 3/2 with trample for 2, I'll allow it. And then, better yet, the Runebound Wolf for 2, a 2/2 as well, and we can pay 4, tap it, to deal damage equal to the number of wolves and werewolves we control to target opponent. And this is where we're going to get these wins. Like, this is probably the best card in the deck. We make the wolves, right? And then we deal the damage. Stack the wolves with the ones that we have in deck as well. The Pack Song Pup, a 2/2, another wolf, and 1/1, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control another wolf or werewolf, put a +1/+1 counter on the pup, and when it dies, gain life equal to its power. Decent. Wolf Strike, instant speed for 3. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until the end of turn. And if it's night, then deal damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So the +2/+0 if it's night, the fight, or no, it's better than a fight, damage equal to its power, so there'll be no damage taken on our behalf, is amazing. And it's at instant speed, so get as many of these Wolf Strikes as you possibly can. Crushing Canopy, destroy target creature with flying, destroy target enchantment. Not as good as the Wolf Strike by any means, but to remove flyers may be beneficial in Gruel. Rending Flame for 3, instant speed, dealing 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If it's a spirit, it also deals 2 damage to its controller. We talked about Child of the Pack, and then we have the Infestation Expert for 5, a 3/4, and whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Daybound. Nightbound, the same thing, but it's a 4/5, which is pretty decent. It'll also make 2 of those tokens instead of 1. Finally, we have the Wolfkin Outcast for 6, a 5/4. It will cost 2 less to cast if we control another wolf or werewolf, which we will. And then Nightbound, whenever Wedding Crasher or another wolf or werewolf you control dies, draw a card. That's absolutely amazing. That's the deck. I think it did get better I'm a little worried about it, but again, I'm not entirely sure how it will stack up against some of the more aggressive builds there. If you can get the right cards, right? It's kind of how that story goes. Moving on, we do have Rakdos Vampires and Blood Tokens. This is a tribal-based deck. Our cornerstone card is the Blood Tithe Harvester for 2 mana, a 3/2. Decent, right out of the gates. And when it enters the battlefield, create a blood token. Nice. We can tap it to sacrifice itself. Target creature gets -X until the end of turn, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you control. Activate as a sorcery speed. So this is great because it's an aggro-style creature that can double down as removal. So we want to be stacking blood tokens within the deck. The Voldaren Epicure is a 1 mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and we create a blood token. We have the Relentless Bloodseeker. At the beginning of your end step, if you've gained life this turn, create a blood token. We can sacrifice 2 blood tokens to transform it at sorcery speed to the 3/3. And at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained life this turn, create a blood token. It keeps that ability, and we can pay 5. Each opponent loses 2 life, and we gain 2 life. Absolutely amazing. Vampire's Kiss. Target opponent or target player loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life, and you create 2 blood tokens. Oh, yeah. And then we have the Blood Hypnotist, a 3/3. It cannot block, and whenever you sacrifice 1 or more blood tokens, target creature can't block this turn. This ability triggers only once each turn, opening up our attacking lanes. Markov's Retribution for 3. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until the end of turn. Target vampire you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. So good. Make sure you get lots of those. More blood token stuff, though. Sorry, the Wedding Security. We've seen this already. 5/5, 4/4. Whenever it attacks, you may sack a blood token. If you do, put a counter on it and draw a card. Very, very good. And then there's things like Vampire's Vengeance, dealing 2 damage to each non-vampire creature. Create a blood token, which is cool. The Gift of Fangs, enchant creature, +2/+2 if it's a vampire. Otherwise, -2/-2. So whether we need removal or we just want to push out more damage, that's great. The Parasitic Grasp, 3 damage to target human creature. Cleave it, 3 damage to any creature. Gain 3 life. Cool beans. Braid, we talked about that already. And yeah, that's the deck. Rakdos Vampires, I feel like, is going to be one of the more competitive aggro decks. The fact that you have access to so many blood tokens with the removal and decent creatures that draw you cards, whew, that's a contender for sure. Into our decks, getting close to the end, 3 left. Boros Aggro. I didn't know what to call this deck. Boros Hastes, Boros want to smash you in the face. Our cornerstone card is Markov Waltzer. 4 mana, 1/3 with flying and haste, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, up to 2 target creatures you control each get +1/+0 until the end of turn, right? So it's going to get damage in. It's going to help us get other damage in as well. 2 target creatures you control could include itself. So basically, it's a 2/3 that buffs something else up by +1, right? With that in mind, we do like trample, we do like haste, and we do like damage. The Daybreak Combatants for 3 stood out. It's a 2/2 with haste, which is nice, getting that damage in. And whenever it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+0 until the end of turn, which again could be itself, which is really nice. The Honeymoon Hearse for 3 mana, 5/5 with trample. Tapped 2 untapped creatures you control. It becomes an artifact creature until the end of turn. And then, the Voldaren Epicure. This thing is all over the place. A 1/1, which we can use to get that honeymoon out. That deals damage to our opponent. And we create the blood token, which we can just sift through our deck with. Great. Trample through the anger +X/+0, where X is the number of copies in our graveyard. Playing with a 40-card deck makes this more viable, even in limited than standard. Plus, we get to draw to keep going through our deck. Fairly decent to ensure we're getting combat damage in. Removal through Valorous Stance, creature with toughness 4 or greater, or we gain indestructible, which is nice. Fierce Retribution, destroying attacking creature uncleaved. Cleaved for 6, any creature. A Braid, dealing 3 damage or nuking an artifact. The Voltaic Visionary is a 3/1, nice aggro creature. We can tap it to deal 2 damage to ourselves, exiling the top card of our library. We may play that card as a sorcery, or at sorcery speed, I guess, for the tap here. And then whenever you play the card, we get to transform the Visionary to a 4/3 that can't block. So a nice attacker for 2 mana. Rending Flame, 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If it's a spirit, 2 damage to that creature's controller. The Bloody Betrayal, gain control of target creature until the end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until the end of turn. Create a blood token, right? So smacking them with their own things. The Griff Wing, a 2/2 with flying and training, and whenever it attacks, we can pay 2 to give something else that's attacking flying, which is quite nice. Hopefully it's the Visionary over here, or better yet, the Berserker. With that being said, we also have the Angelic Quartermaster with flying, 3/3, 2+1/+1 counters. I guess a +1/+1 counter on 2 creatures, which is great, just to help buff up the team. So I really like this deck. I feel like it's got a good chance to compete against the Rakdos variants. I'm a little worried that it doesn't have the draw to back everything up, but I mean, I think it puts out a little bit nicer with the flying, right? The fact that we have the flying and the haste mixed with the removal is maybe better because we can remove and attack at once. But again, this is going to have to come to fruition in a little bit, sees. However, moving through our decks, the Simic Mill / Horror, I didn't even know that this deck existed. I'm going to be honest. This is a fresh deck to me. Our cornerstone card is the Vile Spawn Spider for 2. A 2/3 with reach, which is pretty good. It's going to shut down some of those flying decks. And at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. We can pay 4, tap it, sacrifice it to create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each creature card in our grave. Activate this at sorcery speed. So a lot of self-mill within this build. And then we want to go real wide with some insects. We have the Crawling Infestation for 3 at the beginning of your upkeep. Mill 2 cards. Whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere during your turn, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn, right? So the spider is going to flood all at once with a bunch of insects as we mill them into the grave and finally, nuke them all out. The Crawling Infestation, every time we get one in there, is going to make one. So these 2 cards together are very, very good. We have other things like the Scattered Thoughts for 4. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put 2 of those cards into your hand, the rest in your graveyard. Decent. The Mold Graph Millipede for 5, a 2/2, and whenever it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, then put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature card in your graveyard, which is great. I mean, this is going to trigger the infestation. It's going to help the spider later on. So you can kind of see how this is coming together. We have the Screaming Swarm for 6 mana, 4/4 flying. Whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, target player mills that many cards, which is just decent because, we're going to be going wide with all of these insects, and then we're going to attack and just mill our opponent out. Really cool beans. We can also pay 3 to return it from our graveyard to our library, second from the top. We have the Dreadlight Monstrosity for 6. It is what it is. A 5/5, Ward 2, pay 5, can't be blocked. Decent. Activate only if you own a card in exile, which, I didn't even take into account if you own a card in exile. This might not fit in the deck. We're going to have to come back to that. Activate only if you own a card in exile. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that we will. With that being said, we still have things like the Flourishing Hunter for 6. A 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among other creatures you control, sadly. But we've got the Bramble Worm as well for 7, a 7/6 with reach and trample. Gains life. When it enters, we can pay 3 to exile it from our graveyard to gain 5 life, and just like that, exile's back on the table, baby. I knew I put it in there for a reason. Moving on, Witness the Future for 3, sorcery speed. Target player shuffles 4 target cards from their graveyard to their library. You look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of those cards into your hand, the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. If we mill ourselves too far, which is a possibility, we can backpedal, right? Just a little bit of an insurance policy. Fear of Death for 2. When it enters the battlefield, mill 2 cards. Enchanted creature gets -X, -0, where X is the number of cards in our graveyard. We can basically nuke one of their attackers. Lunar Rejection for 2 to return target wolf or werewolf creature to its owner's hand. We can cleave this for 4, plus we get to draw a card, which is just decent. Mulch for 2 to reveal the top 4 cards of our library. Put all of the land cards revealed this way into our hand, the rest into the graveyard, which is nice. The Taxidermist, +3/+2 as long as there are 4 more creatures in your graveyard, which we'll get to. And it's a 1/2 that adds mana of any color, which is absolutely amazing in this deck. The Alchemist's Retrieval For 1, cleave for 2 to return target permanent you control to its owner's hand, or, cleave that for the extra, and then it doesn't have to be your own. And then Sinopate just as a counter spell, why not, right? I like counter magic just in case. So this deck, I had no idea that it would come together so well. The Crawling Infestation, one of our key cards alongside the Veilspawn Spider. This also works really good with the Screaming Swarm, but you can also go in another route. And, if you've got the Millipede, you've got the Sacred Thoughts, it's all here. I absolutely love the way that this deck came together. Moving on, our last archetype, Golgari Toughness. Our cornerstone card is the Ancient Lumberknot for 4, a 1/4. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So we're looking for a bunch of fatties, and let me tell you what, we found them. First off, we have Unhallowed Phalanx for 5 mana, a 1/13. This will be a 13/13. It enters the battlefield tapped, but, I mean, what an absolute heater. We can give it Trample through Massive Might, +2/+2, so, 15/15 with Trample, I guess is all right. LOL. we can also give Trample through the Spiked Ripsaw, +3/+3. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a force. If you do, target creature will gain Trample until the end of turn. So that's another way to gain Trample on the Phalanx. Moving on. We have Catapult Fodder. This is a 1/5, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures that each have toughness greater than their power, transform it into a 2/6. We can pay 3, tap it, sacrifice another creature. Target opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. Okay, so this brings us full circle to the Phalanx again, right? Oh my god! This is too much. So this is feeling really good. Moving on, the Gluttonous Geist, a 1/4 for 3. When it enters the battlefield, create a blood token. Whenever you sacrifice a blood token, gain life. Hero's Downfall, destroy target creature or planeswalker. A little bit of removal alongside Parasitic Grasp for 2. Cleave for 3. 3 damage to target human or whatever creature if you're cleaving it, and gain 3 life. Moving on, we have the Apprentice Sharpshooter, a 3 mana, 1/4 with reach and training. It's going to be a 4/4 with reach, goes to a 5/5 with reach, so on, so forth. Holy Toledos. The Dormant Grove for 4, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on creature you control. Then if that creature has toughness of 6 or greater, transform the Grove, a 3/6 with Vigilance. It's going to be a 6/6. And then giving all of our other creatures Vigilance as well. Salute. I absolutely love it. Bleed Dry. Target creature gets -13/-13 until the end of turn. If it would die, exile it instead. And the Lance. This deck looks like it absolutely slaps. It is dependent upon getting this lumber knot in play and keeping it there, but you can see through the knot, the Phalanx, the fodder, and the trample that you're going to have no problem. So these are all 10 of the Crimson Vow limited archetypes. You can play these archetypes, of course, in sealed and in Premier and quick drafts, which is great. Moving now on to part 2, which will be general information to guide you through to the end step, which is one of these archetypes. First, you need to be aware of them all, so we went through them all. Next, it will depend upon which picks we get in our pack to guide us to one of these different archetypes. With that being said, there's a couple resources we can use. The first and foremost will be Magic the Gathering Arena Assistant. This is available for free to everybody, and each download actually supports me a little bit financially, a few cents, LOL. So check that out within my Linktree link in the description below. And you just pick your set here if you want to familiarize yourself with different cards, see how good they are and why they're good, right? You'll get professional opinions, even better opinions than I have. So you can go through all of the different cards, familiarize yourself with their strengths, their weaknesses. You can also check out different decks, and you have a draft sensei to help you go through that and learn, right? So this is great. You don't even just have to study it beforehand, which, I mean, general awareness is going to lead you to success. However, it will run alongside your draft process, giving you the rankings and the little information tidbits for each card that's in your pack as you pull it, so you can use Magic the Gathering Arena Assistant as a tool to guide you through to one of these archetypes. It will also recommend a deck for you to play. This is great news. It makes drafting much more accessible to a beginner with a decent play experience rather than just getting pummeled like, oh, I made a bad deck and lost because of that. You can use the computer to guide you in more than one ways. So with this out of the way, we also have the ability to look at, individual tier lists that exist outside of the assistant. One of my favorites is Deathsea. Ta-da! Movie magic. So deathsea.com will bring this up for you. Of course, I'll have the link for everything in the description below. This is a very well put together tier list by someone who plays a ton of Limited. It's a good way to familiarize yourself with all of the different cards and their ratings. It'll also go through the mechanics if you have no idea what's going on within the set. And probably the coolest thing will be the top commons, right? More so important within the Premier Draft as you'll compete against the other individuals for these cards. However, in the Quick Draft, you'll probably get to pick these cards whenever you feel like it. And of course, the color rank here as well, which is typically based on removal, but it is what it is. So this is good. It's not super important to memorize because, like I just showed you, the assistant will basically do this all in the background for you, which is really nice. But it's great to take multiple opinions into account. And then finally, we're moving to our last resource that I use to master Limited play, drafting. Just like that, drafting archetypes up on the table. Now, this is a YouTube channel ran by the one and only Sam Black. Show some love. Link in the description below. You can go through some drafts and basically just listen to the things that this guy has to say. Ultra knowledgeable, super giga-brained, and going through all of the different colors, playing some drafts, talking about the cards. So a great way to learn firsthand if you're just looking to put something on while you're drafting in the background. Of course, you can take a break from my content. I understand. So give Sam a shout out. Let him know that you love his content and it's been helping you become a better Limited player. And with that all out of the way, that's all we've got. That's all we're doing. That's all that you need to know to become a successful Limited player. Thanks for watching. Oh, well. Ta-da! Drafting Archetypes is Sam Black's YouTube channel, an ultra knowledgeable individual who drafts. Like, this guy loves Limited, giving you all of the guides, all of the competitive drafts broken down play by play, doing a better job than I ever could. So check out Drafting Archetypes if you want to watch some content and learn a little bit more in depth about this Crimson Vow Limited set. With that all out of the way, let's wrap up, go over everything that we've talked about today to ensure success within your quick draft farming experience. Alrighty, so we went through all of the archetypes. First and foremost, we need to familiarize ourselves with our end game, right? Where am I going? What's my destination? Next up, we talked about resources that you can use to help guide you. Arena Assistant, Deathsea's tier list, and of course Sam Black's drafting guides. This is going to give you a little bit more in-depth knowledge rather than having to refer to what I'm doing all the time. With this out of the way, I'm producing cheat sheets that will be available within our Discord, link in the description below in the link tree, right? To have these decks posted for you guys. So while you're drafting, you can quickly open up these different pictures and you're like, oh, I've got this card here. I probably want to make this deck. And that's just going to make it a little bit easier for everyone as well. So like the video, show your support. These styles or this style of content takes, hello Maya, takes a lot more to produce than most, but at the end of the day, doing my best to provide some value to the community. So thank you all so much for your time and attention. On behalf of myself and this fucking racket machine over here, have a magical day, and we'll see you soon in the next.